Missed an episode of your favorite podcast? Choose from over a decade of content in our archives, not just the latest episode. All free at GCNlive.com.
This is your call to action. Get prepared, America. Economy, survival, energy, disasters. This is USAPrepares.com. Informative radio, educational radio. Interact now by emailing instructor@USAPrepares.com or text at 434-390-7953. Class, please take your seats. Now, your instructor, Vincent Finelli.
Yeah. Everyone all set? Cocked? Locked? Here we go. Your dial set correctly to USA Prepares. Thank you for being with us today. Jason is engineering the broadcast at Genesis Communications Network in Minnesota. I'm Vincent Finelli. Today, a special broadcast with Captain John Ragan in Texas and his lovely wife, Becky. And so both will be with us. We're going to hold off on taking calls for the, until John is done with his assignments that he's going to go over in class. And then we can take your calls. So no calls until we tell you, okay? Welcome, John Ragan.
Good morning, Vincent.
Good morning, John. And Becky Ragan, good morning.
Good morning.
So, you guys are all set for 2 hours of putting smiles on faces? And so, John, did you want to call this a retirement broadcast or not?
Yes, that's how I titled it in my post, the retirement show. Mm-hmm. And what I mean about that is, I've basically done what I can to warn people about what's coming. We've spent several years together trying to educate, and at this point, there's really nothing more I can add to that. We're at the point where all that's left is to take action, and even now it may be too late. And in my post I said, even, especially if you own real estate, it may be too late. Because I'm looking at all these charts, and, just on the air, we've covered a few thousand charts over the years, and I've seen so many more than that. And the way I can liken it, I would imagine if you had a patient connected to an EKG, and you started seeing some very funny things happening, you'd suspect that they're getting ready to have a heart attack. And that is the way, not just the financial charts, but business charts, all over the place, different sectors, different countries. It sure looks to me like we're getting ready to experience that financial heart attack. And when that happens, your options decrease dramatically, because whatever you own, with maybe the exception of gold and silver, most of that's probably going to lose quite a bit of value. And if you're in real estate, then hopefully you can afford to be where you are, because especially if you're over 50, that may be where you're going to be for the rest of your life if you get to keep it. Because governments are going to be needing money. They'll raise taxes as much as they can, but that's not going to be enough. So there'll be regulations that will impose more fees on top of that. And then when you break those regulations, there's fines on top of that. So it's not going to be pretty. Plus, people are going to want to take things from you. And I would imagine we're going to start seeing armed guards at grocery stores. And then if you grow your own food, even if it's just container gardening for apartments, I wouldn't be surprised to start seeing that being stolen from people. And if you have a farm like you do, I wouldn't be surprised if armed groups don't come out to take what they want, that you don't need it as much as they do. And I even sent you a link here in Texas. You know, one rancher discovered he had 500 head missing. And these are the good times. Mm-hmm. So what I'm going to do...
You can think of that as roughly $500,000 being stolen from them. And then the cost of getting it back is really, really high. It's tough to get all those cows rounded up and brought back. And cows get something called shipping sickness. So you put them in a trailer and you bring them back home if you can find them, and they're not the same as when they left because they've been traumatized. And they may have gotten shipping sickness. So, and some may have died and gotten hurt and injured and beaten and who knows what. So it's very serious. And you're right. These are the good days. And this week I mentioned that our family noticed some guy who was really interested in stealing one of our cows. And we just had a nice chat with him. And we explained it would go terribly. And we have never seen him since. But, you know, there were guns involved. And that's what happens. I mean, we live right here in Missouri. Our neck of the woods is the Wild West. Nobody's coming to help us. So if somebody wants to steal our cows, it's going to be difficult, and we're not going to let them. So you're absolutely right. These are the good days. Becky, what are your thoughts? Do you want to weigh in?
I have to agree with John. You know, these are much better days than what's coming, and we need to prepare, not necessarily physically, but we've got to get our spiritual house in order. Our country needs to turn back to God desperately.
Or the principles that we've been taught, like the Ten Commandments and being nice people, and gosh, we're not. We have lost our way. You guys are seriously looking at moving to Belize. Is that right?
Yes, and that's part of what I explained in the post. It's time for me to take my own advice. So part of my retirement here, it's two-part. One, I think most everybody knows, I found out a couple of years when I was at the Watchman Conference here in Dallas that had some health issues. It took several months to find out what the leading candidates on that were, which was too much iron and too much insulin. And I think we've at least stabilized in that respect, but there's so much more we have to do to recover our health. And then you and your wife were nice enough to help us pack up and move from Springfield, and we've still got a few dozen boxes to go through, and a lot of that's going to be going away, because there's going to be very little we plan on taking, because especially starting out, most of these places are furnished, so for the most part we just need clothes. And this is going to be a process too, and if we're fortunate, we hope to make it there in July. If it takes longer, then the next potential date would be January of 2021.
John, I was thinking about that move, and I've thought about it several times since you moved from Springfield, Missouri to Texas. And we were at the meetup, and on average, there were over 50 people to meet up at the low end. And we asked for some, anybody want to help pack, for the Ragans? It'd be nice to get a hand, and there are only four of us. Sandy and I and two others, and then, of course, you guys. And the point I'm trying to make is I was really disappointed. Actually, I was more than disappointed. I was angry. What in the heck happened, and where was everybody? And yeah, hey, we're all in it together, and we're here to help. And well, they didn't show up. But it was not an anomaly. It's the way it always is. People say they're in it together, and the bottom line is they're in it for themselves. Would you disagree or agree with what I said?
No, and a lot of that's been a very difficult lesson for me. I believe talked before, the genesis of the financial State of the Union. I'd have to say it started in 2007 when I read a post about a speech that the Dallas Fed President Fisher had given. This was shortly after the Social Security trustee reports had come out for the year. And way back then, the national debt was single-digit trillions. That's how much has changed in the interim. And he talked about, and I think it was back then, roughly $60 trillion in the unfunded liabilities for Social Security and Medicare. And I read that and thought, we can't handle that. And then when in 2009 found out I was going to be laid off, it's when I ended up enrolling for my master's in finance. And at the end of that, there was still no work for me in Dallas, so we were hoping to do semi-retirement in Missouri. But while I was there in Dallas, especially the last few months when they couldn't get rid of me because it was a mass layoff, but they moved me to another corner of the building, and I believe we were on the 20th floor of Energy Plaza in downtown Dallas here. And you look out the window, and the old downtown post office pretty much across the street, and look to the left, the First Baptist Dallas campus was there for people that know the Dallas layout. And I'd look at the people down the street and think how much they don't know about what's coming. And there were times I would actually weep. And we moved to Springfield the end of 2010. And boy, it was a wild ride then. And we didn't make the first Get Prepared Expo. We were there for, we were there for most of them. I made it to the last. We'd already moved to Texas. Becky couldn't make it back because she was working. And I really appreciate that, you gave me a platform to try to help people. I believed that, if only you could, boil this down, make it where you can see, this number is so much bigger than that number. You can't fix this. That would, help people wake up and take action. And, the hard lesson is that's not the way it works. It goes back even as, we talk about the Roman Empire. As long as they had food and were entertained, bread and circuses, the government could pretty much do what they want. It's only when, especially the bread runs out, that things get really nasty.
Yeah, I've got a couple comments. I've got a couple comments about what you said. When we come back, Captain John Ragan's with us, Becky Ragan's with us, and we're reminiscing about almost 8 years of trying to help people understand what's happening, get them to prepare for themselves, not for us, for themselves. And we haven't done so well. We'll be right back. Captain John Ragan's with us, Becky Ragan's with us, and I just wanted to share with you another failure that we've had here at USA Prepares. It's like nonstop failures. I floated the idea that one more time, I found 1 square mile of property out this way in Missouri, and we could get it for, let's say, $1,200 an acre. And it was divided into 2, 5, 10, 20-acre parcels. So a gravel farm road through it, if you will. It was just magnificent. I mean, literally magnificent. It's gone. It's all been cut down. It's been destroyed, so it's not viable anymore. So several years later, I thought, let's try one more time. And so I've identified 200 acres. And I thought, okay, 100 acres for the village, for solar, manufacturing, well water system, a mechanics shop, agricultural production, gardens, so forth. So one half of the property would be for common uses, the common building, the meeting hall, and that kind of thing, worship hall, all of that. And people could buy 1 acre if they wanted, and we would work together. We would teach each other, homeschool, all those things, the ideals. I've only been doing it for a couple of weeks now. This is the beginning of the third week, and I'm going to give up at the end of this week. Only one person has expressed interest. Only one. We're a national radio broadcast. We go worldwide across the internet. We've been doing it for 8 years. And so I'm stunned. I'm absolutely stunned that there's so little interest. And how much would it cost? I don't know, a couple $1,000 to get an acre. Because, if you buy 1 acre goes to the village, for common use. It still isn't working. So I'm convinced that we can't do it. My heart's broken. I look around, but at the same time, people have $200 or $300 for sneakers. They have money for movie tickets. They have money for pizza. They have money for beer. They have money for a 65-inch TV, or larger if there's a new one that's larger. They've got $800 for a cell phone and the service contracts that go with it. They've got money for these exorbitant car payments. They've got money for those St. Louis Cardinals jackets and all the other animals on jackets for sports teams. They've got money for that, but they don't have money to take care of themselves. I was reading a story about Kim Kardashian's husband, West, or Yo, or Ye, whatever his name is today. He had a little worship service. He got more people to come to his worship service. And who the heck is he anyway? Than we've ever been able to get to all of our expos combined. How is that possible? It's disheartening. And I am at the point where I have given up. I'm just going to finish up this week. And if anyone wants to contact me, they'll have to figure out how to do it. They can call GCN. They can figure out some way of contacting me. And maybe contact another instructor and say, I'm interested in the village, but only one person. Any comments on that, John? Is that unbelievable or what?
Yeah, I believe it. And you know how it's we've had these coincidences with Chris Martinson of Peak Prosperity. And just this past Friday, and I can't tell you what the post says because it's behind his paywall, but he has the executive summary up there for the public. He is attempting to put together, like-minded communities to, make it through, be resilient through what's coming. And I don't think he knows what he's in for. And even if you were successful in getting people together now, the skill set that you need for, raising the food, which is going to become so critical, you don't learn that overnight. I went to an intentional community near Waco back in 2010, and had a 3-day homesteading course. Thought I was going to be in really good shape after that, and what I discovered is how much I didn't know. And these people had, some of them that I was learning from had been in this community for 20 years, and they were still learning how to do things.
Yeah, let's talk a little bit more about that when we get back and from this break. Becky, I'd love to hear your comments about these things as well. Captain John Ragan, you bring up a very good point. And when you talk about Chris Martinson trying to do what we've tried to do twice, we wish him luck. It's really, really difficult. But if you look at anybody who talks about these little villages, they're really talking about going back to the 1500s, except for scavenging, except for using the materials we have now, the iron and the stainless steel and the glassware. But other than that, we're talking about building fires, maybe have some solar that's currently in existence. But other than that, we're talking about using the existing technology until it breaks, but doing it the hard way. Tractor's great. as long as you have fuel, as long as you have lubricants, as long as you have spare parts. But we're literally talking about going backwards. And what a lot of people just don't understand is that it takes about 6 or more years living on a particular farm in order just to understand how that farm works. And I can speak with authority on that it takes that long. It literally does. And if our class, I can't show it because I took the website down because of the trolls. But if I could show our farm, it was rough. I mean, neglected and rough. Now it looks a lot better, but it took 15 years. And half of that, roughly, was figuring out how we needed to go. So you're absolutely right. Becky, do you have any comments on how hard it is from your vantage point?
Well, it's very difficult to get people to think about anybody but themselves anymore. John and I drive down the streets and people are cutting us off in traffic, or, it's me, 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 me. It would really be wonderful if we could get back to the way the church was in Acts. They lived together, they worked together, they took care of each other, they took care of the widows and orphans, and now nobody seems to care about anybody but themselves. I would never, ever, ever want the events of 9/11 to occur again, but 9/12, and for about a week or two afterwards, everybody was courteous. They looked out for each other. We were united as a nation, which we haven't seen since, and I doubt that we'll ever see it again.
Captain John Ragan, your thoughts?
Yeah, and you might remember a few years ago, Becky was on with us and talking about the Little House books and being able to use them as a resource. Maybe she wants to recap that a little bit.
That sounds great. Go ahead, Becky.
Well, Laura Ingalls Wilder just was recounting her childhood memories. But if you look at the entire set of books, she talks about how her pa built a place for them to live, how to make butter, cheese, how to cure meat, how to take care of a farm, and basically everything you would need to know is in this set of books, and I highly encourage people to purchase that. She wrote it very simplistically. It's basically geared toward children, but we adults can still glean knowledge from it. Like John and you have both said, you can't learn how to tend a farm and take care of that immediately. It takes practice, it takes time, but that's a very good starting point.
And that farm that you're talking about, the Laura Ingalls Wilder house and farm and properties just down the road from us, literally, just down the road. And, yeah.
John and I had the privilege of touring. They actually have two houses, one that Almanzo built and then one that Rose had built for her parents. And the second house, they had this ingenious way of collecting rainwater. They had a cistern in the basement, and it provided all the water that they needed just by collecting rainwater. John and I were both fascinated with that and thought that was terribly clever.
My parents bought an old manor house on the East Coast, and it was built in 1844 by a railroad entrepreneur. And actually, there are probably 4 or 5 of these houses scattered in maybe a 10-mile radius. And that house had a sort of large house. It had a fireplace in every room, 2 fireplaces in the living room. Every bedroom in the kitchen had a fireplace. I think there were 5 or 6 bedrooms. And it was dilapidated. My dad and mom were determined to restore it to its original state. My dad took off the siding. It took him years to take off every board, turn it around, and nail it back on, all the clapboards. And he did that because the wood that was on the house was better, but it was weathered. So the underside was still good. So he took off every board on the side of the house, 40-foot ladders, and rebuilt it. But that house had exactly what you're talking about. It had these large 6-foot by 6-foot slate slabs that were hand cut, and under that was a cistern that was a cylinder made out of bricks, and the rainwater was directed into that cistern. So there was a hand pump, hand pump on the top of it. So that was in 1844. So yep, you're absolutely right. But we've lost our way. We don't make things we don't cast iron anymore. We don't machine iron anymore. We don't need to do that because they do it for us in China. And I understand that we don't even make alternators and starter motors for cars. Every single car has a starter. Everyone, regardless of when it was built. If it's on the road, it's got a starter. And everyone, with very, very few exceptions, has an alternator. And we don't make any of them either. So it's going to be very difficult because we don't have the infrastructure or the machinery or the foundries or the technical knowledge or even the desire to do it again. We've lost our way, and praise the public training camp because we don't think it's necessary to teach that. Microsoft Office is the way to go. That's what we should be teaching. But you can't build a water pump with Microsoft Office. I can guarantee that. Any thoughts on that, Becky?
Well, we've definitely, like you said, we've lost our way. Excuse me. We've lost our skill sets, the knowledge that our grandparents and great-grandparents had. We don't know anymore. We don't want to sit down and talk to them. If we can't Google it or we can't text each other, people just aren't interested anymore. It's so sad.
And do you see this? I know that you have a place where you go to work, and it's in the numbers business. You are involved with preparations of financial statements and things like that, all kinds of number-related documents. Do you see in people around you that they are not interested if it doesn't have to do with their cell phone or Facebook or checking their messages, that they're really not interested? Are you seeing that at work? Can you talk about that or not?
Definitely, I see that. I'm definitely the only one from my generation that works there. I'm old enough to be everybody's mother, and all they do is stay on their cell phones. The technology. I mean, I just shudder to think what would happen if the power went out and they couldn't recharge their phones or something. They would be totally lost. They wouldn't have anything to do. John and I have way too many books, but we have a lot of books that, we don't need technology to read. And so, we could definitely entertain ourselves if we didn't have electricity. And it's just so sad to think that the next generation coming up doesn't have that joy. I'm just really heartbroken, like you said, and saddened by what I see in the world.
Becky, we've never talked about this, but I'm just wondering, when you were growing up, was sewing something that young girls did with their moms? Did they learn how to sew, darn, mend, cut their own dresses from patterns and then sew them together? Were you involved in that?
Yes, my mother didn't like to sew, but my grandmother crocheted and knitted and all of that, and she taught us, and I took home ec in school, so I learned how to sew, but mainly with a sewing machine. So, without power, I wouldn't be able to, but yes, I would take a pattern, cut the cloth, and make a dress or a top or pants or whatever, all by myself, and there was great satisfaction in that, and it fit better than anything I could buy off the racks, and I think that's a lost art too. I never see. I mean, you used to sit in a doctor's office and you would see women knitting or embroidering or, something to keep their hands occupied. And now it's everybody's head is down and they're playing on their phones or texting or, I miss the old days. Mothers and daughters don't spend as much time together. In fact, most of the people I work with don't want to have much to do with their mothers. And, now that I'm older and everything, I can say that my mother is still one of my best friends. She can't get around as much as she used to, but we used to have so much fun together, shopping, going on trips, and nobody does that anymore.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. You're right. You're right. We don't. I do with, when we go to the big city, Springfield, Missouri, the whole family goes. Anybody who's here, everybody gets invited. We know in advance. It's nothing that's spontaneous. Hey, you want to go to Springfield? Or we never say, what do you guys want to do? I don't know. What do you want to do? I don't know. What do you want to do? I don't know. That never happens where we are. Fathers don't seem to work with their children. I can't believe that the millennials hardly know how to change the oil in their vehicles, nor do they want to. It is so bad right now that we have lights to tell us when to change the oil. We have lights to tell us when a bulb is out in our vehicles. We have all kinds of computers telling us what we need to know because we don't know how to know that anymore. And when I get in my car today, every day, and it's not just me, it's the whole family. Before we get in the car, we walk around it. We walk to see if there are any cats or dogs behind it, underneath it, chickens. We look to see if their tires are flat. We look to see if it's leaked anything from when we parked it last. And we make sure it's ready to go. We look in the seats if it's in a parking lot to make sure there's nobody hiding in the back seat, that kind of thing. That's what we do. Seems like it's the right thing to do. But most people don't do that. We'll be right back. So there's a story of recently of a person selling a vehicle on Craigslist. And there are all kinds of pictures of the vehicle. The price is there, the location is there. And then there's a description of the pros, the cons, the good, the bad, what it needs, those kinds of things. It's all there. And the person told me that he got texts, and it says, here's the number to call for information. And then the texts start coming in. Things like best offer, ? That's it. Not is your price firm? Hi, my name's Joe. Is your price firm? No. Best offer ? Location ? Location was in the ad. All the information was in the ad. But the person who placed the Craigslist ad for a friend was under siege with these 2 or 3 word questions. No, thank you. No, may I, please. Could you please? None of that. It was just hammering without any kind of cordiality. Who would want to engage with anybody like that? If it's like that from the beginning, how's it going to be during the transaction? John, do you have any comments? What I'm describing is the devolving of society, how we are becoming meaner, and as Becky said, me first, and as you said, me first. That's where we are. Any comments?
And I think the technology is a part of that too. Whether it's just plain online shopping or now in stores, you check yourself out, which I actually prefer because that way I get to check the prices and bag things the way I like. But there's less and less, personal interaction. And there's, on top of that, less and less tolerance for anything that's different. And you look at the protests over the weekend of all these ignorant, indoctrinated young people that, they've been told that carbon dioxide is going to destroy the world in just a few years. And they know nothing about science. They know nothing about math. And even people that are real scientists have a hard enough time trying to keep up with the latest information. And I've brought up about how cosmic rays are at the highest they've been since we've been able to keep record. And what we're learning about cosmic rays, they have an effect on weather, especially particle formation, making clouds. We already know that it's going to increase because of the way things are happening with the sun and the earth and where the solar system is in the galaxy. And cosmic rays affect our health, it affects our electronics, but no matter how much you would try to educate these people, you'll never get through to them. And you've also got some out there that they just don't even care to listen to begin with. And as I'm sure you share the same frustration. Just wake up and see what's happening. But unfortunately, that's not the way human nature works.
I've had a chance to chat with a number of our instructors, and they'll call me and I'll call them, and we're all saying the same thing. People are not paying attention. They have no idea what's happening. They are egocentric. They are self-centered. I guess the quick and dirty term would be me first. And we can't reach them. And the consensus of the instructors whom I speak with at length off the air is, forget it. Just forget it. We can't do it. It's too big. And I keep thinking about, the village. And one of our detractors hammered me on the Ron Gibson channel. And he said, Finelli is going to be the mayor. Well, somebody's got to be in charge. Okay? And if I'm going to risk this project and risk my wherewithal and risk my savings, who in their right mind would expect me to do that without being in control of the project? At least initially. Who in their right mind would expect that? And would I entrust a group of people with cell phones to be on the property? Why would I do that? Why would I allow our, we'll call them secrets, our plans, whatever it is that we're talking about and doing? We're not talking about anything evil. We're just talking about survival of our little village. Why would we want anybody to have a cell phone to allow that to be transmitted to whomever? The Zuckerbergs, the Tim Cooks. I mean, why? Why would we do that? We wouldn't do that. So no cell phones. And I believe that cell phones have been really a damaging technology for society. Young people want them in elementary school. Why? Captain John, you were at the Watchman Conference in Texas. You were at the USA Prepares Get Prepared Expos. You were at the Meetups. You were on the radio. You were doing seminars in face-to-face with people. You're on the radio with people. Is there a difference between the Watchman Conference and the reaction that you got, meaning people actually taking any action, appearing that they might take action, as compared with the Meetups, the radio, and USA Prepares? Is there any difference? Does anybody want to take any action?
I think you get some excitement during these events, but from what I see, that quickly wears off afterwards. Here, the Watchman also has vendors in there that offer supplies and equipment much the same as the Get Prepared Expo did. But it's, I still follow them on YouTube, and there's, some information comes out. I really appreciate people like Coach Dave Dobbenmeyer. He is successful in getting some people together to go out and be of service during crises. In fact, back during Hurricane Harvey, he was able to get some people down here to Texas to help out, including the area of my hometown. And this past weekend, we're kind of blindsided with another storm that we were just down there this weekend. Fortunately, we were on the west side, which didn't really get much damage. But, we tend to treat hurricanes as the big bad storms that come in. Well, Imelda wasn't even a named storm until about a half hour before it came ashore. So it was a very low-end tropical storm, not even a hurricane. And again, my hometown was hit heavily. And reading from friends I have in Beaumont in that area, there were homes in Harvey that didn't flood, that had a foot of water after the storm came through. The Houston mail facility had its roof cave in, and this services from Conroe to Galveston, which is a pretty large area. They're just now getting back to normal. The Interstate 10 bridge on the east side of Houston, some barges came loose, severely damaged pilings, and what they're going to do is use the other side and make it a two-way bridge. So that area is going to be very nasty to go through for the next few months until they get the other side repaired. And that's just from a small storm. And these are normal times where we have all of our resources to bear on it. But, getting back to how this started, even if you look at, Southeast Texas, these people just went through a major storm with Harvey. And I don't think they expected to have to deal with so much with such a small storm that just, ripped up things even worse. And it wasn't the wind. It was lots of rain in a short period of time. Vincent.
I was thinking about what you're saying with the storms, and I was thinking about people, and I was thinking about New Orleans. And the report just came out that 1 out of 7 adults in New Orleans has a warrant out for arrest. Now, what does that have to do with anything? It's almost 15%. 15% of adults in New Orleans has a warrant out for his or her arrest. That is what is happening to society. How could that happen? How could we have those are the ones who have been caught. What about the ones who haven't been caught? Is it like 2 out of 7 that are criminals, or 3 or 50%? What I see is I believe we've passed the tipping point to fix this. I believe we've passed the tipping point where people want to read. I believe we've passed the tipping point where people will care for their neighbors. It would take some kind of cataclysm for people to work together. However, what I see is the lack of knowledge. So I'm thinking that if, let's say we built a little village here in Missouri, how many people would come with skills that they could be ready to hit the ground, teaching, running, shoveling, bulldozing, planting, building, framing, plumbing, wiring? How many people are ready to hit the ground running? And I think the answer is precious few. So that means that we'd have a lot of warm bodies that we'd have to feed. to keep them from becoming cold bodies. And how does that work? It doesn't work. And it's all because people refuse to pay attention. They refuse to read. And that was one of my questions for Becky Ragan. And that is, Becky, you live with Captain John Ragan. He's your husband. And I'm sure you talk about things privately that John has figured out. He's connected the dots. What is it like living with the knowledge that we are in such a mess that we can't fix it? What is it like living with that?
Sometimes it's a little depressing and a little disheartening, but I still have hope that we can come together, that we can learn to trust God, learn to trust each other again. I think that's part of the biggest thing. You know, we see so much on the news and in our own personal lives that people have hurt us, people abuse us. I mean, John and I used to be very giving and trying to support and help people, but we've been abused, we've been taken advantage of, we've been talked badly about, and we're just kind of done. We just don't seem to want to help anybody else, but that's not what God commands us to do. So we've got to find the way to become the people that we need to be and that God intended us to be, and go back to being like the church in Acts was. Vincent?
Very interesting that you say that, Becky, because all the instructors I've spoken with, 100% of them, feel exactly the same way, that we used to want to help people. I used to love going to the meetups. For years, I loved going to the meetups. Now I can't imagine going to the meetup because, well, frankly, the meetup group whom Dr. Shealy took such good care of, free advice, free consultations. Oh, Dr. Shealy, this hurts, that hurts. What should I do about this? I have a cousin, an uncle, a mother, a sister, a brother, a father, a son, a daughter. This is happening. Can you help me? And he would, for free. And yet they threw Dr. Shealy out of the meetup group. And then they threw me out. And I'm pretty sure, Captain John Ragan, you would have the same honor. I have a feeling that after all of your work, after all of your presentations, that this weak group of individuals would throw you out too. And I think they'd throw Joey out. And I think they'd throw just about all of us out. And this is the same group that refused to not have, they refused to leave their cell phones at home or in the car. Couldn't do it. I was stunned. I was stunned at the level of greed. You know, to me, it's not polite to bring your cell phone into someone else's house if you have one. It's not polite. It's not polite to walk into their kitchen, shake hands. The host says, hey, would you like something to drink? How about some cookies, whatever it might be. You sit down at the kitchen table for a chat, a cup of coffee, and the cell phone comes out on the kitchen table. It's offensive. It's offensive. And I won't tolerate it. And because of that, I don't want people to come here anymore. I don't want to help people. It sounds awful. You know, it used to be that I would say, you know, if you can't afford how much? $5, actually $4 to $12 for the tickets for the Expo. $4 to $12. We've had as many as 80 plus seminars in 2 days. $4 to $12. And if you can't afford it, that's okay, because we'll buy your ticket for you. And your spouse, and your children. No more. No more. I'm not willing to do it anymore. And at the same time, there's a conference in Branson, just ended a couple weekends ago. It's about UFOs and aliens, answering the question. $125. And if you want the video, $99. Really? Really, $125 for that? And they had people paying it. I think the gross might have been somewhere around $250,000. We've never seen anything like that. We just covered our expenses. That's all we wanted to do. We wanted to get the information out. We weren't trying to make money. It cost tens of thousands of dollars to put one of these conventions on. And yet, we would talk to the exhibitors and we'd say, okay, we're going to have one in 9 months. Would you like to attend? Oh, geez, what's up? 9 months out? That's pretty, I don't know. When will you know? Well, why don't you call me, like 30 days before. Really? I got to make the arrangements now. I've got to lock in and pay a multi-$1,000 deposit on the venue. Would you like to come? I don't know. Okay. And it's like pushing a rope. You can't get people to commit. And when they do commit, they don't necessarily show up. The proof of that is you go to your phone and the doctor's office calls and says, hey, you have a dentist appointment. Don't forget. Don't forget. Or you go to the doctor's office and you see a sign that says, if you missed your appointment, you can't come back. Because people don't consider that it costs the dentist, the doctor, that professional, overhead, time, all the money to be there waiting for you, and you don't show up. I can't stand it. I can't stand it. And so when that happens to me, when someone says they're coming, I try to lock it down and say, let me make sure I've got this right. So you'll be here at 2 o'clock. Is that right? And if they stand me up, that's the only time they stand me up. Doesn't happen anymore. When someone says, hey, Vin, I'm thinking about dropping by. Okay. Now, what does that mean to me? Well, it used to mean that I would wait all weekend. No more. No more. Someone says, I'm thinking about stopping by, and if I have to go out, I lock the gate and leave. Because they didn't commit. That's where we are today. Becky Ragan's with us. Captain John Ragan's with us. In that line of thinking, I just wanted to share this thought and hear your reaction, John. Is it the same as mine? Now, people used to call the farmhouse, and they would say, hey, I'm in the area, I'd like to stop by, and I'd say, sure. Lately, when people call, if I don't know them, if they're not a dear friend of mine, and this does not apply to you, Captain John or Becky, but people would call and say, hey, I'm traveling through Missouri, I'd love to see your farm. My answer now is no. No. It's not convenient. No, you may not see my farm. No, I can't help you. Because they just want to take. And I'm not willing to do it. John, does that sound like the old me, or is that the new me?
I believe that's the new you.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Are you at that point too?
Well, about the only way I can relate is the visit to my website. And, we did have an interesting article last week on how it's not just concussions that are causing problems with sports. It's any hit to the head. And that did spike the statistics a little bit. But even with that, I only had 41 unique visitors to the website this past week. And you and I were 2 of those. And some of those are search engine bots. It's a little disheartening when you're trying to do your best to inform and help people, and you get so much less traction than the Kardashians.
Yeah, and all they do is bend over in a slightly different way. That's all they do. I mean, how much are the Kardashians going to help anybody in a crisis? How much? Are they willing to open up their wallets? Are they willing to get a shovel out and get behind a shovel? Are they willing to get behind sandbags and fill them up? Are they willing to cook meals? I doubt it. And if these Hollywood types talk about saving the planet, they jet set around. They've got gas guzzlers, fuel guzzlers. They take all kinds of airplanes rides, drilling holes everywhere. They've got mansions that I can't imagine how much the electric bills for these multiple mansions that they have. It's an outrage. And so you guys are going to Belize. I mean, that's the plan. What about family? What about children? What are your thoughts? How are you going to handle that? If I may ask, if it's personal, just say, no, I'm not going to tell you. That's okay.
Well, we're in a position. We're in a position where it's pretty much just us. My daughter left Facebook a couple of years ago, and that was our only way of contact with her. Her mother and I divorced when, shortly after she turned 1, and her mother and I were both Air Force officers at the time, and we have absolutely no other friends in common. We don't, even have intermediaries to make contact. So it's just us, and so for us, that is one of the considerations when you leave the country, friends and family. But the family side's been taken care of. All the rest of my family is dead. And then once Becky's parents are gone, her siblings are so involved with their grandkids that there's no real contact there. It's even hard to get the siblings together for either Thanksgiving or Christmas with her parents. And from our point of view, it looks like they seem to think that they're going to be around forever. They've just celebrated their 66th wedding anniversary Saturday, but that might be the last one. We don't know. He was supposed to be dead before his 55th. And at least her brother does quite a bit for him. He lives close by there, but they so rarely see the others, and it's sad to watch that.
Yeah, I have a friend, a dear friend, who's Polish, and I think about the Poles and the Italians, and they used to have picnics and barbecues and cookouts in the backyard. The whole family was there, aunts, uncles, grandparents, parents. Captain John Ragan's with us. Becky Ragan's with us, his wife. And I just want to, before we run out of time, I want to thank you, John, for all the years of preparation to be on the air. You've done an enormous amount of research. I don't think most of our class understands what it really takes to be on the air, what it takes to have your ducks in a row, to do the research, know the subject matter, understand the subject matter in a way that it can be presented in a non-visual form, in an auditory form only. I don't think that's very well understood, and it's not always easy. So I really appreciate all the years, the almost 8 years that you've spent with us doing that, and I mean that from the bottom of my heart. I'm not kidding. I want to thank Becky, and when you and I are on the phone, I'll mention, make sure Becky knows that I appreciate the sacrifice that you made in being on the radio with me. I really mean that to both of you. You've done an outstanding job. And, as we get closer to the final broadcast, and I don't know when the final broadcast is, but I'm starting to lose my patience with the GDP. I really am. I see them everywhere. They're in the way. They're using up valuable resources. They're wasting resources. They're jet-setting here and there just because they can afford it. They might have a cup of coffee in a plastic cup and then throw it away. And they don't think about, where does that go? Which mountain of trash does that go to? They're not considering reduce, reuse, recycle. They're not thinking about the careless, reckless behavior that they have. They're putting all that to the side because of their desire to increase their own personal pleasures. And the homosexuals, even those guys, maybe even especially those guys, what's with them? How's that going to work? And if we ever got a village together, would I allow homosexuals? The answer is absolutely not. No. Because they're risk takers. reckless risk takers. You have any comments on any of what I said, John?
Yeah. When I found out I was going to be laid off, I started my master's in finance July of 2009. From there, the next 10 years, I spent 30,000 hours at least in education and research. And that's, it's been frustrating just trying to get information out. I would clip several hundred articles a week, sometimes over 1,000. I'd sort through those and stick articles in my show folder. And quite often it'd be, 70, 80, sometimes over 100. And most of the time I pare that down to maybe a dozen. And then maybe we got to 3 to 6 of those on the air. There's just so much more that, try to relate. And if you think, even if you just try to relate the top 1% of what I've learned, that's 300 hours. And divide that by 40, you're talking several weeks. And people don't have that kind of time just to learn the most critical of all of that. And then when I try to summarize it even further, I figure right now if I wanted to do a total financial State of the Union, including the financial end of the line, we'd be talking about 4 hours, not broadcast hours, 4 hours in person. The health issues, the excess iron, the insulin, sugar being toxic, the oils, the gut microbiome, and then just add on some more general things. We're probably talking about 8 hours just on health things. And that's not as a doctor. That's just, giving you a foundation for, things you can do with, the proper nutrition and avoiding toxins just to give yourself a better life. I haven't even tried to put together what I've learned on, deception, but I would imagine that's at least another couple of hours. And, you look at how do I relate that? You've got 2 hours. I was fortunate to get 3 hours with the Hackman Report, but, that's not 3 full hours. That's broadcast hours. And then when you're at a conference, the speaking period is usually between 45 minutes to an hour and a half. And those areas I just described, probably about, at least a good 16 hours, take 2 full work days to try and get to that. And that's just a foundation to have a conversation. So it's very difficult. And just to make sure before we run out of time here, if it weren't for Becky, you would have never had me on the air. Because, going back and getting that master's did nothing for earning me any money. And if it hadn't been for Becky, I'd be just another homeless veteran that would be ignored. Perhaps I could sneak across the border and come back as an illegal alien and get some benefits. But, for serving my country, like the other veterans in the past, were held in very low esteem by the government. And just go ahead and finish up today's post before we run out of time. Obviously, when I was on weekly, I'd probably be going through 40 or 50 websites a day collecting information. I've pared that down to 5. I don't go to nearly as many as I used to, but there's certain things I like to keep track of. So I'm offering these up to everybody. And if you go to the financialstateoftheunion.com, you wouldn't have to type these in. You can just click on it. But these sites are naturalnews.com. And from that site, you get a lot of good health information and general news. Some of the contributors, I think, still have things to learn, but overall, it's a pretty decent website, and it's, pro-America, more libertarian and freedom-oriented. We've talked a lot of articles from Dr. Mercola, so Mercola, MERCOLA.com. He posts 2 to 3 articles a day. I do recommend signing up for his email newsletter, and that way that gets delivered to your inbox, and you can decide whether or not you want to read that article without having to go to his site. Plus, every so often he will offer discounts if you want to order from his store. A lot of what we've talked about also come from ZeroHedge.com, ZeroHedge.com. That's where I get a lot of my financial news from, not exclusively, and I also get into some general news as well. Michael Snyder does a lot of the same type of stuff I do, only in blog format. The economiccollapseblog.com, really a lot to type in, like the financial state of the union.com. And his financial commentary and putting the pieces together are very similar to what I do. So if you want to see, all these different articles pulled together to give you a picture of what's currently going on, that's a nice place to go. But like I've said, we're now at that point where that doesn't matter anymore. Right now, we're just waiting for the event. Once that event happens, our lives are going to be different. And for, like I say, people that are in 50s and 60s and older, do not expect a recovery during your lifetime. It's not the good old days like the Great Depression where you can get over it in 10 to 12 years. This one's going to take a lot longer. And I've also talked about the Suspicious Observers YouTube site. I do recommend, subscribing and doing the bell so you get the alerts. I watch that every morning. I don't bother with the weather, wind maps, and the shots of the star, so I just do the news items. And then he does some very interesting stuff. So I've got the space, weather, and climate news there. And in fact, I even bought his disaster prediction app. So if we have a big CME, I'll get an alert on my phone and, take what little action can be done at that point. And as I say at the end of the blog there, retired doesn't mean oblivion just yet. I plan on compiling other resources. It's very hard to take 30,000 hours of work and pull out some of the best things. There's some other, books and videos that I want to add, but that's going to take time to do. What's been frustrating for me is you can't even get Christians to care. And what I plan on is once I get to Belize, those things I've talked about, the 4 hours of the financial, 8 hours of medical, and so on, is to put those together into presentations. And maybe after the collapse, when the Christians are broken, maybe then they'll be willing to listen, and I'll be ready for them. Vincent.
You mentioned being a veteran. You mentioned the possibility of being homeless if it weren't for Becky. I did something a few days ago. I called Walmart. And I believe that it'd be very difficult for you to get a job because of your qualifications. I believe it would be very difficult for me to get a job because of my qualifications. I believe it'd be difficult for all of our instructors. Even Rick wants to get a job to pay some of the bills, and he's having trouble doing that. So I thought, I'd like to try it. So I went on the internet and I called the local supercenter, the Chinese factory outlet supercenter. And I talked to the gal at the control tower. And I said, hi, I'm interested in talking to someone about applying for a job. She said, well, you'll have to go to the internet and apply online or come to the store and use the kiosk. I said, I don't want to do that. She said, well, that's the only way we can do it. And I said, well, I'd really like to have a face-to-face interview with the store manager. And she said, you can't do that. I said, well, actually, I believe I can do any job that you have. Any job that you have in the store, I can do. I can be a clerk. I can stock shelves. I can fix your microwave communication system. I can fix your computer network. I can be a sales advisor in the automotive department. I can be a mechanic. I can be a customer service advocate. I can do any job. Do you believe that? She said, actually, I do believe that. And I said, so you don't have to look at any other applications. I'm your guy. She said, you have to apply online. I'll tell you a little bit more about that when we come back. It'll just take one more minute. You won't believe it. TheFinancialStateOfTheUnion.com. TheFinancialStateOfTheUnion.com. That's Captain John's website. He and his wife Becky are with us today. And I just have one comment, and then the rest of the broadcast, I'd love to hear the final remarks from Becky and John. So, at this Walmart telephone call that I made, the gal just told me, just go to the website and check the boxes that you can do. Check the ones that are of interest to you. And I said, well, I'm interested in everything. She said, well, just check them all. I said, so when you look at this and you see that I've checked all the boxes, is anybody going to pay any attention to this, or are they just going to throw it away? She said, no, we'll pay attention to it. So we are now at a point where there's no interviews if you want to work for Walmart, to apply. You apply online, and they're going to have some algorithm sort out whether they should spend any more time talking with you. We've lost our way. Now, do I want to work for Walmart? Absolutely not. They're destroying American manufacturing. They've done a great job. That's why I call it the Chinese factory outlet. But someone with as much knowledge as Captain John or Becky, really? Are we going to have a chance in the current world where they want really dumb drones? The GDP? It's going to be very tough for us. Becky, your comments?
Well, given our age and everything, finding another job would definitely be difficult for me, but been with my current company 3 years, and they tend to treat the employees pretty well. But throughout our broadcast, I think we've all been pretty negative about the state of the world, and I'd like to leave on a positive note. There is still a lot of good in the world. I mean, you look at the Cajun Navy, the Texas Baptist men, all of the people that are always ready to go into a disaster and help wherever they can. Some people take leave from their jobs. Some people have lost their jobs. They do it all on their own dime, and you have to admire that. And John recently had an encounter that really gave us a lot of hope, and I'll let him tell that story.
I believe I already brought up on air where I went to Walmart one day, and an older gentleman had fallen on the hot pavement in shorts, and a guy was trying to help him up. I tried to help with him, but my back couldn't do anything. Fortunately, tracked in the crowd. Within a couple of minutes, a couple of nice young black men came by and had him up in no time.
That's really nice, because it could have gone a different way. It could have gone to where a whole bunch of people got out their phones and started videoing this so they could post it on the internet. Not helping, just videoing it. Like, look at this. Look at me, look at this. Look at them, look at me, look at this. Yeah, nice story. And the Cajun Navy, absolutely wonderful. And on the other side of that, though, there are the people who say, well, this is great. We've got a hurricane or a tornado. It's a good time to go and loot. And that's what happened at Joplin. I wanted to get in and be of assistance, and I couldn't get past the police barricade. I had to go around them. Why? They weren't letting anybody in to help because they couldn't figure out who was helping and who was there to steal. So they stopped everybody. And there were people who were at death's door. And had they not been rescued by people who went around the police barricade, they would have been dead. And you've got to wonder, if you look at the Bahamas, absolutely devastated, absolutely. They say the smell is horrific from the dead bodies, animals as well as humans. There are over 1,000 people missing. Gone. Missing. It's not all that big of an island. So, where's the humanity there? There are looters. There are people who are taking advantage of the situation. I'd like to think that we'd all get together and help. But from what I've seen, we don't. And these are including people that I've seen at the meetups. I'd love to say, wow, you know, what a great group of people we are and how we've helped each other. We wouldn't even give one guy, meaning the meetup group, who lived in Springfield, and I don't live in Springfield. John, you weren't there at the time. Becky, you weren't there either. But one guy lived in his van. All he wanted to do was park his van on somebody's farm or somebody's place. Just have a base of operations for a while. He didn't want water, didn't want electricity. He just wanted to be able to park there and help with the chores around the property. Nobody would help him. Nobody. And these are the same people. You might have heard me, John and Becky, at the meetup saying, you know, every 3 or 4 months, hey, just asking. Here we are. Are we all willing to help if one of us gets in a jam? Are any of you willing to help? All the hands would go up. John, did you see that? Becky, did you?
Yeah, it's like you said.
Yeah. John, I'm looking forward to, I know this is your retirement, but I'm looking forward to our anniversary show in February. It'll be 8 years. I'm looking forward to that. Becky, thanks for joining us. Any quick comments? 10 seconds? Becky?
No, just hello to all of the friends we made up there, and just take care, and God be with you.
Becky, thank you. John, thank you.